The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Clarence's house as Camilla, queen consort, stood before her ornate dressing table. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the delicate sapphire necklace from its velvet-lined box. The jewels caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the cream-colored walls of her private chambers. This wasn't just any piece of jewelry. The necklace had belonged to her beloved grandmother, Sonia Rosemary Keppel, who had raised Camilla during some of the most difficult years of her childhood. The sapphires, each one carefully selected and set in platinum, told a story of love, resilience, and family bonds that transcended social expectations and royal protocols. Camilla closed her eyes and could almost feel her grandmother's gentle hands fastening the clasp around her neck for the first time. She had been only 16 then, a shy girl struggling to find her place in a world that seemed to demand perfection at every turn. Her grandmother had pulled her close that day, whispering words that still echoed in her heart decades later. "These stones have been in our family for 3 generations, my darling," her grandmother had said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "They've seen joy and sorrow, triumph and heartbreak. But, most importantly, they've been worn by women who never forgot where they came from or what truly matters in life." Now, as Camilla prepared for another day of royal duties, she felt that same connection to her past. The necklace wasn't valuable because of its monetary worth, though the sapphires were indeed precious. Its value lay in the memories it held, the love it represented, and the strength it gave her when she needed it most. The queen consort had worn the necklace on some of the most significant days of her life. She had worn it when she married Charles in that quiet ceremony at Windsor Guildhall, feeling her grandmother's presence even though she had passed away years earlier. She had worn it during her first public appearance as the king's wife, drawing courage from the familiar weight of the stones against her collarbone. And she had worn it just last month when she visited a children's hospital, where a little girl with cancer had told her the blue stones reminded her of a summer sky. As she fastened the clasp this morning, Camilla thought about the day ahead. There would be meetings with charity representatives, a visit to a local school, and an evening reception for visiting dignitaries. Each event would require a different version of herself, the caring patron, the engaged royal, the gracious hostess. But, underneath all those roles, she would be sustained by the same strength her grandmother had given her all those years ago. The necklace had become her talisman, her connection to the woman who had shaped her understanding of dignity, compassion, and quiet strength. Her grandmother had never sought the spotlight, never demanded recognition for her kindness. She had simply lived her life with grace, treating everyone she met with respect and understanding. These were the lessons that the sapphire necklace carried, and they were the principles that guided Camilla in her royal duties. Margaret, her longtime lady-in-waiting, knocked softly on the door before entering. She had been with Camilla for nearly 15 years, through the transition from Duchess to Queen Consort, and she understood the significance of certain pieces in her mistress's collection. "Good morning, Your Majesty," Margaret said with a warm smile. "The sapphires again today?" Camilla nodded, touching the necklace gently. "It feels like a day when I need their strength." Margaret understood. She had seen how the necklace seemed to transform Camilla's posture, how it brought a certain calm to her features. It was remarkable how a piece of jewelry could carry such emotional weight, but Margaret had learned that for the royal family, objects often held meanings far beyond their material value. As they went through the day's schedule, Camilla felt the familiar comfort of the sapphires against her skin. The first appointment was with representatives from a literacy charity, an organization close to her heart. As she listened to their reports about reading programs in underserved communities, she thought about her grandmother's love of books and how she had instilled that same passion in Camilla. The morning progressed smoothly, with each engagement flowing into the next. Camilla felt confident and centered, the necklace serving as a subtle reminder of who she was beneath the titles and protocol. She laughed genuinely with the schoolchildren during her visit, her warmth evident to everyone in the room. The head teacher later commented to her colleagues that the queen consort had seemed particularly radiant that day. But, as afternoon approached, an unexpected change to the schedule would set events in motion that no one could have anticipated. A message arrived from Buckingham Palace Princess and had requested an urgent meeting with Camilla regarding matters of state protocol. The meeting was to take place immediately, and the tone of the message suggested it was not optional. Camilla felt a flutter of unease as her car made its way through London traffic toward Buckingham Palace. Her relationship with Princess Anne had always been complex, built on mutual respect but lacking the warmth that existed between Camilla and other members of the royal family. Anne was known for her direct manner and unwavering adherence to tradition, qualities that Camilla respected but sometimes found intimidating. As they approached the palace gates, Camilla unconsciously touched her necklace, drawing strength from its familiar presence. She had no way of knowing that within the hour, this simple gesture would become impossible, and that the afternoon would unfold in ways that would test every lesson her grandmother had taught her about grace under pressure. The palace courtyard was busier than usual, with several official cars and security personnel visible. Camilla noticed the heightened activity but assumed it was related to preparations for the evening's state dinner. She had attended hundreds of such events, and the elaborate preparations had become familiar background noise to her royal life. As her car pulled to a stop, Camilla gathered her thoughts and prepared to face whatever matter of protocol had prompted Anne's urgent summons. The sapphire necklace caught the afternoon light one last time as she stepped from the vehicle, its blue stones reflecting the sky above like tiny fragments of heaven. She walked through the palace corridors with the measured pace that had become second nature to her over the years. Staff members bowed respectfully as she passed, and she acknowledged each one with the gracious nod that balanced formality with warmth. The familiar surroundings of Buckingham Palace, with its centuries of history embedded in every wall and corridor, usually provided her with a sense of continuity and purpose. Today, however, something felt different. There was a tension in the air that she couldn't quite identify, a sense that the normal rhythm of palace life had been disrupted. As she approached the room where Princess Anne waited, Camilla took a deep breath and touched her necklace one more time, unaware that it would be the last time she would feel its comforting presence for quite some time. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reveal the complex dynamics of royal hierarchy, the weight of tradition, and the pain that comes when something precious is taken away without warning or explanation. In just a few moments, the Queen Consort would discover that even the highest ranks of royalty were not immune to the arbitrary exercise of power, and that sometimes the most valuable things in life could be claimed in the name of duty and protocol. Princess Anne stood with her back to the door as Camilla entered the ornate drawing room. The afternoon light streaming through the tall windows created stark shadows across the Persian carpet, and the atmosphere felt charged with an unspoken tension that made Camilla's steps slow as she approached. "And," Camilla said softly, her voice carrying the careful balance of respect and warmth that she had perfected over years of navigating royal relationships. "You asked to see me urgently?" When Princess Anne turned around, her expression was more serious than usual, her typically stern features set in lines that suggested this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. She wore her naval uniform with its crisp lines and gleaming insignia, a reminder of her military background and no-nonsense approach to life. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, immediately focused on Camilla's necklace. "Yes, I did." Anne's voice was clipped, businesslike. "We have a situation that requires immediate attention, and I'm afraid it involves you directly." Camilla felt her stomach tighten, but she maintained her composure. Years of public scrutiny had taught her to never let her emotions show, even when faced with unexpected challenges. "Of course. How can I help?" Princess Anne walked to the mahogany desk that dominated one side of the room and picked up an official-looking document. The palace letterhead was visible even from a distance, and Camilla could see several signatures at the bottom, including what appeared to be the king's seal. "This concerns protocol regarding the wearing of certain jewelry pieces within the royal family," and began, her tone suggesting she was reading from a prepared statement. "There have been concerns raised about the appropriateness of wearing non-royal jewelry to official functions." Camilla's hand instinctively moved to her necklace, and she felt a chill run through her body despite the warmth of the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. "I'm not sure I understand. What jewelry are you referring to?" "The sapphire necklace you're wearing," Anne said directly, her gaze fixed on the blue stones that had suddenly become the center of attention in the most unwelcome way possible. "According to palace records, this piece is not part of the official royal collection, nor has it been properly documented as a personal piece suitable for royal engagements." The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. She had worn her grandmother's necklace to countless official functions over the years without anyone questioning its appropriateness. It had become as much a part of her royal identity as her title itself. "And this necklace belonged to my grandmother. I've worn it to official functions for years without any issues." "Surely there's been some misunderstanding." Princess Anne's expression remained unchanged. "Palace protocol is quite clear about these matters. All jewelry worn to official functions must either be part of the crown jewels collection or approved personal pieces that have been properly documented and cleared by the royal household. This piece has never undergone that process." Camilla felt the room spin slightly around her. The necklace had been her constant companion through some of the most challenging moments of her public life. It had given her strength during her first solo charity visit, comfort during difficult state dinners, and confidence during press conferences where every word was scrutinized. "Who exactly raised these concerns?" Camilla asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "And why is this being addressed now, after all these years?" And consulted the document again. The matter was brought to the attention of the royal household staff during preparations for next week's state visit. Photographs from recent events were being reviewed, and the jewelry was noted as being non-regulation. "The king has been informed, and he has reluctantly agreed that protocol must be followed." The mention of Charles brought a new wave of confusion and hurt. Her husband knew how much the necklace meant to her. He had seen her wear it on their wedding day, had listened to her stories about her grandmother, had witnessed firsthand how it connected her to her family's history. How could he have agreed to this without speaking to her first? "Charles knows about this?" Camilla asked, unable to hide the pain in her voice. "His Majesty was presented with the protocol requirements this morning. As king, he must ensure that all royal family members adhere to established guidelines, regardless of personal preferences." The coldness in Anne's voice was unmistakable, and Camilla suddenly realized that this wasn't just about protocol. There had always been an underlying tension between them, stemming from Anne's fierce protection of royal traditions and her skepticism about those who had married into the family rather than being born into it. "So what exactly are you asking of me?" Camilla managed to say, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. "The necklace must be removed and secured by palace security until it can be properly evaluated and, if necessary, retired from use at official functions." Anne's words were delivered with the precision of a military order. "Sergeant Collins from the Royal Guard has been assigned to handle the secure transfer of the piece." As if summoned by the mention of his name, there was a sharp knock on the door. Princess Anne called for entry, and Sergeant Collins stepped into the room. He was a tall, imposing man in his mid-40s with the bearing of someone who had spent decades following orders without question. His uniform was immaculate, every button and crease in perfect alignment, and his expression was completely neutral. "Your Royal Highness," he said to Anne with a precise bow, then turned to Camilla. "Your Majesty. Sergeant Collins will escort you to a private room where you can remove the necklace," and continued. "It will be catalogued and stored according to palace security protocols." The reality of what was happening finally hit Camilla with full force. They weren't just asking her to stop wearing the necklace, they were confiscating it. The piece that had comforted her through her grandmother's death, sustained her through public criticism, and connected her to her family's love was being taken away like contraband. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Camilla said, her composure finally beginning to crack. "This necklace has immense personal value to me. It's not some random piece of jewelry, it's a family heirloom with deep emotional significance. Personal significance doesn't override royal protocol," and replied firmly. "The monarchy depends on consistency and adherence to established rules. Exceptions cannot be made based on sentiment." Sergeant Collins stood silently by the door, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional undercurrents in the room but prepared to carry out his orders regardless. His job was to secure and transport valuable items, not to make judgments about the wisdom or fairness of those orders. Camilla looked between Anne and the sergeant, feeling trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have materialized out of nowhere. Just hours ago, she had been going about her normal royal duties, feeling confident and connected to her purpose. Now she was being asked to surrender something that was irreplaceable to her. "I need to speak with Charles," she said firmly. "This is something that should be discussed between my husband and me before any action is taken."
The king is currently in meetings with foreign ministers and cannot be disturbed, and responded quickly. The protocol requirements are time-sensitive due to the upcoming state visit. The matter must be resolved this afternoon. The convenient timing struck Camilla as suspicious. It seemed deliberately orchestrated to prevent her from appealing to Charles or seeking support from other family members who might understand the emotional significance of the situation.
How long will the evaluation process take? Camilla asked, grasping for any hope that this might be temporary. That will depend on the findings of the royal household's investigation into the piece's provenance and suitability, and answered vaguely. It could be weeks or possibly months. Months. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Months without the necklace that had become such an integral part of her identity as a royal family member. Months of attending functions feeling exposed and disconnected from the source of strength that had carried her through so many challenges. Sergeant Collins cleared his throat softly, a gentle reminder that he was waiting for instructions. His presence in the room had become more intimidating as the conversation progressed, though Camilla sensed that he took no pleasure in his assigned task. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "if you're ready, we can proceed to a private room where you can remove the necklace discreetly." The word discreetly carried its own weight. This wasn't going to be a public humiliation, but it was still a forced surrender of something precious. Camilla realized that she had no choice in the matter. She could comply gracefully or be forced to comply, but the outcome would be the same either way. As she prepared to follow Sergeant Collins from the room, Camilla felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had experienced in years. The injustice of the situation, the coldness of Anne's approach, and the violation of something so personally meaningful created a perfect storm of emotion that she knew she would not be able to contain much longer. The walk to the private room would give her a few minutes to decide how to handle what came next. But, already, she could feel the words building inside her, words that would express years of frustration, hurt, and indignation. Princess Anne might have won this battle through protocol and procedure, but Camilla was about to make sure that the cost of this victory would not be forgotten by anyone within earshot. The private room that Sergeant Collins led Camilla to was sterile and unwelcoming, clearly chosen for functionality rather than comfort. It was a small antechamber off one of the main corridors, furnished only with a simple chair and a small table. The walls were bare except for a single portrait of Queen Victoria, whose stern expression seemed to judge everyone who entered the space. As Sergeant Collins closed the door behind them, the weight of the situation pressed down on Camilla with suffocating intensity. The afternoon light filtering through the single small window cast everything in harsh shadows, making the room feel more like an interrogation chamber than a place of privacy and dignity. "Your Majesty," Sergeant Collins began, his voice carefully neutral, "if you could please remove the necklace, I will place it in this secure container for transport to the palace vault." He produced a small, lined box from his uniform jacket, the kind used for transporting valuable items. The sight of it made everything real in a way that the conversation with Princess Anne hadn't quite managed. This wasn't going to be reversed or negotiated. Her grandmother's necklace was about to disappear into the palace bureaucracy, possibly forever. Camilla's hands moved to the clasp at the back of her neck, but they trembled so violently that she couldn't manage the delicate mechanism. The sapphires seemed to grow heavier against her skin, as if they were resisting the separation as much as she was. "I can't," she whispered, and then, louder, "I can't do this." Sergeant Collins maintained his professional demeanor, but there was a flicker of something, sympathy, perhaps, in his eyes. "Your Majesty, I understand this is difficult, but I have my orders. Perhaps if you sit down, it might be easier." "Easy?" The word came out sharper than Camilla intended. "Nothing about this is easy, Sergeant. This necklace has been with me through the most important moments of my life. It connected me to my grandmother when she died, it gave me strength when I married Charles, it comforted me through years of public criticism and scrutiny. And now I'm being told to hand it over like it's some common trinket?" Her voice was rising, and she could feel years of suppressed frustration bubbling to the surface. Every slight, every protocol that had made her feel like an outsider, every reminder that she would never truly belong in the way that born royals did, it all came rushing back in a flood of emotion that she could no longer control. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," Sergeant Collins said quietly. "I know this isn't pleasant, but pleasant?" Camilla's voice cracked with the strain of contained rage.
Pleasant? This is a violation of everything personal and sacred to me, and you're calling it unpleasant? She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoed in the small room.
Her hands were shaking not with fear now, but with anger, pure, undiluted fury at the injustice of what was being done to her.
Do you know what this necklace means to me, Sergeant? She demanded, her voice gaining strength and volume. Do you know the story behind these stones? My grandmother wore them when she helped Jewish families escape Nazi Germany.
She sold other pieces of her jewelry to buy food for starving children during the war. These sapphires represent courage and compassion and sacrifice, things that apparently mean nothing to the people who run this palace. Sergeant Collins shifted uncomfortably, clearly unprepared for such an emotional outburst. His training had covered security protocols and proper handling procedures, but not how to deal with a member of the royal family in the throes of heartbreak and rage.
Your Majesty, please understand that I'm just following orders.
I don't make the decisions about royal protocol.
Following orders, Camilla repeated bitterly. How convenient that phrase is when people want to avoid taking responsibility for cruelty. She began pacing the small room like a caged animal, her composure completely abandoned now. Everything she had learned about proper royal behavior, about maintaining dignity under pressure, about never letting the public see your true emotions, all of it was dissolving under the weight of this profound injustice. 20 years, she said, her voice growing stronger and more accusatory. 20 years I've served this family and this country.
I've endured criticism, scrutiny, and judgment from every corner of the British press and public. I've visited hospitals and schools, supported charities, attended hundreds of tedious state dinners, and smiled through it all because I believed in the institution and what it represents. The words were pouring out now, years of frustration given voice for the first time. Sergeant Collins stood frozen by the door, understanding that he was witnessing something unprecedented and potentially dangerous to his career, but unable to stop it or escape from it.
And what do I get for my service?
Camilla continued, her voice rising to a level that could probably be heard in the corridor outside. I get told that my most precious possession, the one thing that connects me to who I was before all this protocol and pageantry, is inappropriate for royal duties. I get treated like a criminal who's been caught wearing stolen goods. Her hands moved to the necklace again, but this time not to remove it.
Instead, she clutched it protectively, as if her grip alone could protect it from being taken away.
This necklace has done nothing but bring dignity and grace to every function where I've worn it. It's reminded me to be kind when others were cruel, to be strong when I felt weak, to remember that royalty is about service, not just status. But, apparently, that means nothing to Princess Anne and her precious protocols. At the mention of Princess Anne, something shifted in Camilla's expression. The pain and hurt that had been driving her outburst crystallized into something colder and more focused. This wasn't just about the necklace anymore, it was about respect, about being treated like a human being with feelings and history that mattered. You want to know what I think, Sergeant, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. I think this whole situation has nothing to do with protocol and everything to do with reminding me that I'll never truly belong here. I think Princess Anne saw an opportunity to put me in my place, and she took it. Sergeant Collins opened his mouth as if to protest, but Camilla cut him off with a gesture. Oh, I know you can't agree with me. You have to maintain your professional neutrality.
But you have eyes and ears, don't you? You've seen how the family dynamics work.
You know the difference between necessary protocol and petty power plays. The room had grown uncomfortably warm, and Camilla could feel perspiration gathering at her temples despite the cool autumn air outside. Her heart was racing, and she realized that she was experiencing something she had tried to avoid for decades, a complete loss of the careful control that had defined her public persona.
Do you want to know what the most insulting part of this is? She asked, not waiting for an answer.
It's that they're doing this in Charles's name. My husband, the man who knows better than anyone what this necklace means to me, is apparently willing to let his sister strip me of the one thing that keeps me grounded in who I really am. The betrayal in her voice was unmistakable, and, for the first time, Sergeant Collins looked genuinely uncomfortable with his role in the proceedings. He had probably imagined this would be a simple matter of collecting a piece of jewelry and delivering it to the vault. Instead, he found himself in the middle of a royal family drama that was spiraling far beyond his pay grade. "I think," Camilla said, her voice taking on a new edge of determination, "that Princess Anne needs to hear exactly what I think about her protocols and her timing and her complete lack of human decency." She moved toward the door with sudden purpose, and Sergeant Collins quickly stepped into her path. "Your Majesty, perhaps it would be better to wait and discuss this matter when emotions aren't running quite so high."
"When emotions aren't running so high?" Camilla's voice rose again, any semblance of royal composure now completely gone. "When exactly would that be, Sergeant? After they've locked away every piece of my personal history? After they've stripped away everything that reminds me of who I was before I became a royal accessory?"
The frustration of years was flowing out now in a torrent that couldn't be stopped or redirected. Every compromise she had made, every time she had bitten her tongue, every moment when she had chosen dignity over honest emotion, it all felt pointless now in the face of this casual cruelty. "I have served this family faithfully and with dedication," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "I have earned the right to be treated with basic respect and consideration. And if Princess Anne thinks she can humiliate me with her bureaucratic power games, she is about to learn that she has gravely underestimated my willingness to fight back." With that declaration, Camilla pushed past Sergeant Collins and yanked open the door, her fury now focused and directed like a weapon she intended to use with devastating precision. Camilla stormed through the palace corridors with a force that sent staff members scattering out of her path. Her usual graceful walk had been replaced by determined, angry strides that echoed off the marble floors like thunder. The carefully maintained mask of royal composure had been completely abandoned, replaced by the raw fury of a woman who had been pushed too far. Behind her, Sergeant Collins followed at a respectful distance, clearly torn between his duty to retrieve the necklace and his growing understanding that the situation had escalated far beyond his ability to control. Several other palace staff members had noticed the commotion and were watching from doorways and corners, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock and fascination at seeing the Queen Consort in such an unprecedented state. The drawing room where Princess Anne waited was at the far end of the corridor, and, with each step, Camilla's anger crystallized into something more dangerous than emotion. It became righteous indignation backed by years of experience in dealing with hostile audiences and difficult situations. By the time she reached the door, she had transformed from a hurt woman into a formidable opponent.
She didn't knock.
Instead, she flung the door open with such force that it banged against the wall, causing a priceless Ming vase on a nearby table to rattle precariously. Princess Anne, who had been standing by the window reviewing another document, spun around with surprise and immediate disapproval. "Camilla, what on earth?" and began, but she was immediately cut off. "How dare you?" Camilla's voice filled the room like a physical presence, carrying decades of suppressed frustration and current blazing fury. "How dare you send your lapdog to confiscate my personal property as if I were some kind of criminal?" Princess Anne straightened to her full height, her military bearing asserting itself in the face of what she clearly viewed as an unacceptable display of emotion.
"Lower your voice immediately."
"This is Buckingham Palace, not some common." "Don't you tell me to lower my voice," Camilla interrupted, stepping further into the room with the presence of someone who had finally decided that diplomacy was a luxury she could no longer afford.
"You want to talk about what's appropriate?
Let's talk about the appropriateness of ambushing a member of this family with bureaucratic nonsense designed specifically to humiliate and hurt." Behind Camilla, Sergeant Collins appeared in the doorway, looking like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Other staff members had begun to gather in the corridor, drawn by the unprecedented sound of shouting from within the palace walls. Word of the confrontation would spread through the servants' quarters within minutes, but Camilla was beyond caring about gossip or reputation management. "You will control yourself this instant," Princess Anne commanded, her own voice rising to match Camilla's volume. "Your behavior is completely unacceptable and beneath the dignity of your position."
"My dignity?"
Camilla laughed, but there was no humor in the sound.
"You want to lecture me about dignity while you're stealing jewelry from my neck like some common thief? You want to talk about what's beneath my position while you're treating me like a servant who's been caught with the silver?"
The comparison to theft clearly struck a nerve with Princess Anne, whose face flushed with anger.
That necklace is being secured according to proper royal protocol.
If you had followed correct procedures years ago, this situation would never have arisen.
Procedures, Camilla spat the word like a curse.
Your precious procedures.
Tell me, and which procedure covers destroying someone's connection to their dead grandmother? Which protocol explains how to break someone's heart with maximum efficiency?
Princess Anne's expression remained stern, but something flickered in her eyes, perhaps the first recognition that this wasn't just about jewelry or rules.
Personal sentiment cannot override institutional requirements.
You of all people should understand that the monarchy depends on people, Camilla shouted, her voice reaching a volume that could probably be heard throughout this entire wing of the palace. It depends on human beings who serve with dedication and love, not robots who follow your bloodless protocols without question or compassion. She began pacing again, but this time her movement was predatory rather than agitated. Years of experience in dealing with hostile press conferences and difficult public appearances had taught her how to use space and presence as weapons, and she was deploying those skills now with devastating effect.
Do you know what my grandmother did during the war, Anne? Do you know why those sapphires mean something beyond their monetary value? Camilla's voice dropped to a more dangerous register, the kind of controlled fury that was somehow more frightening than shouting. She used her connections and her jewelry collection to help Jewish families escape Nazi Germany. She sold her diamonds to buy forged papers. She risked her life and her family's safety because she believed that human decency was more important than social status. Princess Anne's posture remained rigid, but she had stopped trying to interrupt. Something about the intensity of Camilla's anger was commanding attention despite its inappropriateness. Those sapphires, Camilla continued, her hand moving protectively to the necklace, were the one piece she couldn't bear to sell because they had belonged to her own mother, who died when she was young. They were her only connection to maternal love and family history. And, when she gave them to me, she made me promise that I would wear them whenever I needed to remember what real strength and courage looked like. The room had fallen completely silent except for Camilla's voice and the distant sounds of palace life continuing beyond the walls. Even the staff members gathered in the corridor had stopped whispering, straining to hear every word of this unprecedented confrontation. I have worn this necklace to hospitals where children were dying, and it reminded me to be brave for them. Camilla's voice began to crack with emotion, but her anger kept her words sharp and clear. I have worn it to charity events for victims of domestic violence, and it reminded me that survival requires both strength and compassion. I have worn it through 20 years of serving this family and this country, and it has never once brought anything but grace and dignity to my role. Princess Anne finally found her voice again, but it was less certain than before. The rules exist for a reason, Camilla. They ensure consistency and the rules, Camilla interrupted again, are supposed to serve the monarchy, not the other way around. And, when your rules start hurting people unnecessarily, when they start destroying the very humanity that makes royalty meaningful, then, your rules are wrong. She stopped pacing and faced Princess Anne directly, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made the other woman take an involuntary step backward. But, this isn't really about rules, is it, Anne? This is about reminding me that I'm not one of you. This is about making sure I never forget that I married into this family rather than being born into it. This is about putting me in my place whenever you think I'm getting too comfortable with my position. That's absolutely not, and began, but Camilla cut her off with a gesture that somehow managed to be both imperious and dismissive. Don't lie to me, Camilla said with deadly calm. I've been in this family long enough to understand how it works. I've seen how born royals treat those of us who came from the outside. Most of the time, I've accepted it as the price of the privilege. But, not today. Not when you're attacking something that has nothing to do with royal duties and everything to do with personal grief and love. The silence that followed was deafening. Princess Anne, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, seemed genuinely speechless. The force of Camilla's emotion and the accuracy of her accusations had clearly caught her off guard. Sergeant Collins, still standing in the doorway, cleared his throat softly. Your Royal Highness, Your Majesty, perhaps we shouldn't know, Camilla said without turning around, her eyes still fixed on Princess Anne. The sergeant is here to take